Hi everybody, so with the excitement around the new Fallout TV series, there's probably lots of people coming to Fallout, or maybe you're an existing Fallout player, and you're thinking, what on earth is going on in this world, in this universe? Because it's not the same as ours, yet it's similar in many ways. So I thought I'd do a quick Fallout timeline video to kind of bring you up to speed with it. And the thing to remember is that the Fallout world, it's not our world. It's one that shares a lot of commonalities with ours, especially before World War II. But then after World War II, things start changing a little bit. It's very much based around a future, perhaps, that people in America, especially in the 1950s, saw. So imagine from the 1950s onwards, kind of some technology kind of stayed the same and some changed. But the way that they would have seen the future is kind of where the Fallout world ends up. So, as we know from our world as well, from the 1940s and onwards, the USA in particular became really enamoured with using nuclear power. In fact, the world did, until the dangers of nuclear power became apparent from things like the nuclear tests. So in the Fallout world, nuclear power becomes a resource for powering lots of things, from power stations to cars to radios and all this sort of stuff. And then in 1961 in the Fallout world, the first man in space is actually an American. And in 1969, the first people to land on the moon is the USA Valiant 11. Now, throughout this time, computer miniaturization is not a priority for scientists. So the computers in Fallout's universe they're big, they're bulky, they still use the cathode ray tube monitors, but they are incredibly reliable and tough, which kind of is true today. You know, you can often fire up a computer from 30 years ago and it will fire up, but one made 10 years ago won't. And they still use things like tapes to tapes. And instead, science is miniaturizing nuclear power so it can be used in those applications that we talked about. Also, they develop laser weapons, robotics, genetics, and cybernetics as well. So, as we go into the future, in 2052, in the Fallout universe, the resource wars begin over oil and coal and the things that keep modern society together, and the United Nations gets dissolved. In 2053, there's a plague, I think it is called the New Plague, which emerges, which is highly transmissible, and there's enforced quarantines across the world and in the USA to slow it down. And research into something called the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, begins in secret, which you'll come across in some of the Fallout games. In 2054, there's a nuclear exchange in the Middle East, and in 2054, a little bit later on, Project Safe House begins in the USA, and this is where Vault-Tec starts building all of these nuclear bunkers that we come to be in the Fallout games. In 2060, the fuel reserves over the world start to run out, and America refuses to sell what oil it has to China. And also, America is developing microfusion cell technology, which gives America a power advantage over the world as well. And that microfusion cell technology starts getting rolled out to things like cars and TVs and radios and all this other stuff. So in 2066, to get the oil reserves in Alaska, China invades and the Sino-American War begins. At some point, the USA deploys the T-45 power armor to Alaska to stop the Chinese advances, but the war in Alaska kind of goes into a sort of a stalemate, and then by 2072 USA starts to annex Canada as well to make sure it can have all of its resources. In 2074, to open up a second front, the USA invades mainland China at Shantou. And then on January the 10th, 2077, America wins the Battle of Anchorage, and this is where the Chinese army is completely forced out of Alaska. And then a few months later, at the beginning of October, the USA military on the Chinese mainland approaches and starts to surround Beijing. So it's like the end for the Chinese. So on October the 23rd, 2077, the Great War begins, the nuclear apocalypse. China launches an all-out strike on the USA, which responds in kind with all of their ICBMs, and all the nuclear powers around the world all fire nuclear weapons at each other. And society, as we know it, is destroyed in less than 2 hours. So that's kind of the nuclear apocalypse, October the 23rd, 2077. So where are the games set now? And this is the strange thing about the Fallout games, is they're not in order. So in 2102 to 2104, which is 25 years after the nuclear apocalypse, this is where Fallout 76 is set. Now, Fallout 76 was published in 2018, so at the time of recording this video, it was the latest sort of full Fallout game, you could say. And in this game, you emerge from Vault 76 in Appalachia, which is in the eastern USA. And the idea is you come out and you follow the other Vault dwellers and your Vault leader, your overseer, and you are a direct survivor of the Great War, having entered the Vault before the bombs dropped. So you would have been living your life, probably as a teenager, I'd imagine, or around that sort of time, before the war started. You got into the bunker as the war was starting, and you come out kind of as a person, because you're only 25 years after the apocalypse. Where you are in Appalachia hasn't been totally devastated like many of the other places have. And then you follow various quests and storylines. In 2161, which is 84 years after the initial nuclear apocalypse, this is when Fallout 1 is set. Now, Fallout 1 was published in 1997. It's still playable, but instead of being a first-person or a third-person RPG, it's kind of an isometric look-down game. You can do it, but as you can imagine, from a game from that old, it can be quite challenging to play. But if you're a completionist and you've played all the other Fallout games, you may well want to come back to it, or maybe even just watch some videos about it online about the story, so you can kind of figure out what's going on. And in Fallout 1, you come out of Vault 13, which is in Southern California, which is on the other side of the continent. It's on Western USA. Because you've got a new water chip. You need to find a new water chip that purifies the water for your vault, because the water chip is broken. And you've been living in the vault all your life. You were born there. You're a third generation vault dweller. And basically you're sent out to get this chip. You do all this stuff and things happen. Now in 2241, which is 164 years after the initial apocalypse, that's when Fallout 2 is set. Now this came out in 1998, a year after Fallout 1, so again it's a very, very old game. It's kind of an isometric view looking down on your character as an RPG, so it's quite challenging to play, but again, maybe watch some videos online, or if you finished everything else, go for it. And in this one, you're not a Vault dweller. You're actually a member of a tribe living in the Wastelands, which is in Oregon, which is in the northwest of the USA. And you're the great-grandchild from the character in Fallout 1. And in this one, your village is dying, and so one of the village elders sends you on a quest to get something called the GECK, which is the Garden of Eden something device. And basically, it will help to revive your village, clean the water and make plants grow. So you go off and do that. Now, in 2277, which is 200 years after the nuclear apocalypse, you have Fallout 3, which was published in 2008. So this was when Bethesda took over the franchise, and this is really, really good. Even today, you can play it on your PC or Xbox or PlayStation, and it plays very, very well. It doesn't have lots of the quality of life improvements that we have in modern games, but it looks okay. And the story is really, really good. And in this one, you escape from Vault 101 to go and look for your dad. And you escape into the wasteland, which is around Washington, D.C., in kind of the eastern part of the USA. And in this one, you were born and raised in Vault 101. And you're about 19 years old when you have to force to flee and go on all these adventures and all these quests. Now, in 2281, which is 204 years after the nuclear apocalypse, this is when Fallout New Vegas was released. Fallout New Vegas is set, and this was published in 2010. Now, in this one, you're not a Vault dweller at all. You're a courier in the wasteland, and which is in the Mojave Desert, which is in the southwest of the USA. And you wake up in this village after being shot in the head, and basically you were left to die. I think you were buried as well, and so you've got amnesia. So not much is really known about your past. You might have been a Vault dweller at some time, but it never really gets explained. And Fallout New Vegas, along with Fallout 3, these are often held up by Fallout aficionados as probably the two best parts of the series. Lots of people really, really like them. I think they're great, and they're very, very playable, but I sometimes think you're better off playing the newer games first, just to get you into the series, to get you addicted, so that when you go back to New Vegas or you go back to Fallout 3, the challenges that are there because of the age of the game, in terms of the way that the game looks and the way that you have to play it, you kind of accept those. So now we're on to Fallout 4. Now, Fallout 4 occurs in 2287, which is 210 years after the first nuclear apocalypse. And Fallout 4 came out in 2015. Now, don't let that put you off, because Bethesda they must have put hundreds of millions into this game. It looks fantastic still today. There's a high-res texture pack you can download. It plays great, and you emerge from Vault 111 in the Commonwealth, which is near Boston in the northeast of the USA, as the sole survivor. And what's interesting about this character, you can play as a man or a woman, is that you start the game in before the bombs drop in your little town, and then as the bombs are dropping, you go into the Fallout shelter. You go into the Vault-Tec shelter. You're frozen, and then you wake up, and then you've got to go out. And for you, the nuclear apocalypse was yesterday, but in the Fallout world, 210 years have passed, and so all different other things have happened. All the other occupants of the Vault you're in are dead. And so you're a direct survivor of the Great War, yet you're living 200 years later, coming across all the different things that have happened in the world. And the beauty with Fallout 4 is that it just looks and plays so good. It really looks very, very nicely indeed. So you don't have to play any of the Fallout games in order, but if you were thinking about getting into the franchise, I would definitely say Fallout 4 is the one to go for. I'd definitely play that first, because it looks great, it plays great, the story is interesting, there's lots of different side things to do. And remember, with all of these games, especially Fallout 4, there's lots of other things to do. You don't have to just work your way through the campaign. There's side missions to do, you can go off and just explore, you can create settlements and all that sort of stuff. So there we go. That, my friends, is a brief timeline of the Fallout universe. Hopefully you found it useful. If you have, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe, and I will of course see you again soon.